When you have a polynomial that consists of 4 terms, you have to use factor by grouping to simplify it. So how does factor by grouping work? First, you want to identify and factor out the GCF from every term if possible. If there is a GCF, you want to do that. And the reason why is if you factor out a GCF, things become simpler and easier. Next, group the first 2 terms together, factor out the GCF of those 2, then group the last 2 terms together and factor GCF of those 2. If the 2 terms share a common binomial factor, and they should, you want to factor that out and group the leftovers together. So first thing we have here is we're going to use factor by grouping for 3ax plus 12a plus 2bx plus 8b. So 3ax plus 12a plus 2bx plus 8b. Now I look at this and I see that there is no GCF in common. Not everything has an x, an a, a b, and 8, 2, 12, and 3 have nothing in common. So I'm going to go on to the next step and I'm going to group the first 2 terms together and I'm going to group the last 2 terms together. So group these 2 and I'm going to group these 2. Now I'm going to look for the GCF of these 2 terms. So the GCF of the first group is going to be 3a, and when we simplify it down, it becomes x plus 4. And now I look for the GCF of these 2 terms, and I see that it is a positive 2b. And when I factor out a 2b out of these 2, I get x plus 4. Now, what's inside my parentheses? Inside my first parentheses specifically should be the exact same as in my second. So if there is a mistake, it's most likely going to come in the second one. So we'll come to that later, but the second one should mirror the first one perfectly. And in this case it does, x plus 4. So I can take an x plus 4 out of both terms, and I'm left with 3a plus 2b. So 3a plus 2b. And this is the factored form of this polynomial when done by grouping. Next I have 6y squared minus 2y minus 9y plus 3. Again, no GCF between the 4 terms, so I don't have to worry about it. But I'm going to just start grouping together. So again, my first 2 terms here, and then my last 2 terms, but you need to be careful here. That minus sign is in front of the 9. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the minus sign in front and change this to a positive. So if you do not do this, it's going to come out with a sign error later. So be mindful about the minus sign in front. So now I'm going to look for the GCF of these 2 terms, and I can see that a 2y is in common to both. And so when I take a 2y out of both of these terms, I should be left with 3y minus 1. And now I look for the GCF of these 2, and I see that 3 is in common to both, so I can factor out a 3, which will leave me with negative 3y plus 1. Now this does not match this perfectly, but the signs are pretty darn close. They're just flipped. This is positive, this is negative, this is negative, this is positive. So I factored out 3, but what I probably should have done, and if you don't see it right away, you can always do it this way. I can just factor out a negative. So instead of a positive 3, I can factor out a negative 3, which changes all the signs in here. So whatever they are, flip it to the other side. And now my parentheses match perfectly. So I can factor out a 3y minus 1, and I'm left with 2y minus 3. And this is my factored form. Now if you have the question of, does it matter the order? Could it have been 2y minus 3 and then 3y minus 1? Yes, it can. These can flip. Same with these up here. They can be in different orders, so long as what's inside the parentheses is the same, but whatever order it comes in does not really matter. Last, 16w to the fourth minus 40w cubed minus 12w squared plus 30w. Like before, I'm going to look for the GCF, and with this one, I actually do have a GCF. I see there's a w in common to everything, and I see that all these numbers are even, so I can factor out a 2w. So when I do that, I get 8w cubed minus 20w squared minus 6w plus 15. So now that I have that, I can group my terms together here and here. And don't forget that this minus sign here is going to be moved inside. So it's a little bit cramped, but we can see it well enough. So GCF of the first two terms here is going to be a 4w squared. So I keep the 2w on the outside, just tags along. So 4w squared, and it reduces down to 2w minus 5. And then I look at the GCF here, and since I have a negative here, and this term here is positive, I'm probably going to factor out a negative number. So between 6 and 15 is 3, so I'm going to say negative 3. And w's are only common to 1, so I don't have to worry about it. So 2w minus 5. And now I see that this parentheses matches this one perfectly. So 2w on the outside, still there. 2w minus 5. And then a 4w squared and a minus 3 is how it simplifies. And this is the factored form of this polynomial.